what you just said about that you never really spoke about those things with about your husband with people. Do you think it was much more a private time in your youth than it is now? I mean, does it seem like? It seems like now, as we were saying, people talk more about what's going on in their families and in their lives.
Probably.
Do you think that?
I don't think people were ever. No, I doubt seriously if you talked about it much. Things like that. No.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't ever remember either of my parents ever telling me anything particularly about their early life or anything. You know, as I regret not knowing more about my father's childhood and youth. I think it would have been great. Now, you know, when I think of it now, how nice it would have been to have known some things.
Yes.
But the old ladies are all gone, of course, and that I could have asked. And I was very fond of my father. We were pretty close. He was awfully, I suppose I was sort of spoiled to a certain extent. You know, he probably favored me like lots of fathers seem to do, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to do.
He was a pretty spunky man. He
Was
had,
he?
yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
just move something in the background because I changed the shot a little. We'll see a little more of the background.
You ask Ed, he remembers him. He knew him.
Oh, it remembers your father?
Oh, yes, because they were, you know, when they went to Pittsburgh with me, he was around. Carolyn never knew him, you see. By the time she came along, the girls came along, he was gone. I don't remember when he died. He was only 70 when he died. I was living in Bay Village, and I remember going down for the funeral, but I don't exactly remember when it was. I think it was before Carolyn was born, sometime between 44 and 48. But he was born in 1800 and, oh gosh, it was 70 something, I think it was. I've got the birth dates of both my father and mother upstairs.
Well, did you favor one or the other of your parents, physically even? Or?
You mean look like them?
Well,
I
that's one.
look like my father.
Oh, yeah?
A lot of people think so.
How about in terms of closeness? Who were you really close to?
Well, my mother was awfully good to us as children. She did a lot of extra things for all of us, you know, and everything. But I never was afraid of my father, you know. Like, he was pretty, well, he could put on a pretty forbidding outside appearance, but not with me particularly. I remember when at the funeral home, I was there one day, and one of the judges came in, and I was there, you know, and he knew I was my father's daughter, and he said, I don't know what he was like as a father, but he sure was a spunky lawyer. And I sort of laughed, thinking to myself, he was pretty spunky, you know. Yeah. Yeah, I was, as I say, and I'd like to have known more about him, but I remember him, the fact that his father, that he talked about how strict his father was with him. And I remember him saying one time to me, I remember when I first had my own law office, and I was smoking a pipe, which he smoked all the time. And he said, my father came into the office, and I was just petrified because he'd seen me smoking, and he didn't approve of it. You know, even as a grown man, he was still scared of that old man. But as I say, the old man was smart and a good parent as such, you know. He took good care of his children. And they all, you know, he left a nice estate for everybody.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yes, he did very well. A lot of the money I've got right to this day came directly from that on down. You know, it was written that way so that everybody came on down. And out of those 7 children, there were only 5 grandchildren. Only one man. That was my brother.
Oh, I see.
So when he's gone, that's the last of that. He has no sons.
I see. Oh.
And the old ladies had the 3 old ladies never had any children, you see.
Oh, that's right, because they only one of them married.
And Uncle John, the oldest boy, had 3 daughters.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a little off the topic, but I'm curious myself. How did you get your nickname Skip?
My husband.
Oh.
There was a little boy in the funny paper called Skippy, a comic character, you know, sort of peanutsy kind of little character. And by the time John got Mary Louise out, he said I was long gone, you know, because he had a good Southern drawl, you know, and he started calling me Skip. My mother thought it was just dreadful. She didn't approve of it at all. And some of my good friends out here call me Skip.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Well, Mary Louise it's a stupid name. I think double names are stupid. I don't approve of double names. They're ridiculous. They're more trouble than they're worth.
Yeah, that's right.
And they named me Mary Louise, and nobody, my mother called me Louise.
Oh.
Why? I don't know.
Oh, I see. I'm just going to make one quick change because I think your microphone has moved. Excuse me.
Probably has.
Let me just get it up where it's a little more. Okay.
And, you know, to this day, the only two people left in the world that call me Louise is my brother's wife, Jean, whom I am not I don't dislike her. We just are not the same kind of people. Mm-hmm. And she calls me Louise. And every time she calls on the phone, she'll say, Louise? Louise? When I write to them, I don't even know how to sign my letters, practically, because my brother calls me Hid.
Hid? Now, where's that come from?
I don't know. As a little boy.
Huh.
He must not have been able to say Mary Louise or something, and I don't know whether Hid came from sister and city or Hid. I don't know, but he calls me Hid. And I've never heard him call me anything else. Of course, he doesn't call me much of anything anymore.
Right.
But I can't imagine him calling me Louise. And I know he would never call me Mary Louise or Mary Lou. He would call me Hid if he had to call me anything for anything.
Well, let's see.
So that's where the name Skip came from.
That's good.
I bet you people in Woodville didn't even know I had another name.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you must always have been very popular with the circle of people that you were in wherever you went.
Oh, I don't know. We make friends.
Yeah, it seems like you have a knack for that.
Well, I can take terrible dislikes to people, though.
Oh.
Oh, yes, I can. There are very few people that you meet that really you want for friends. I just couldn't put up with all of them.
Well, did you feel in your travels that you lost a lot of friends?
Oh, Knoxville, maybe. I never lived in any of those other places long enough to acquire very many friends. I still have one woman, believe it or not, that I keep in contact with in Knoxville, and I haven't heard from Happy now. There's another nickname, Happy. Her name was Edith. I haven't heard from her since a long time. She's as old as I am, and I wonder if she's all right, because there's nobody to let me know if she isn't, you know.
Oh, yes. Right.
So I don't know, but she's my last contact with Knoxville. Everybody else is, God, I don't know, dead and gone, I guess. And I've been gone, too. You know, when you get to be this age, you don't have many friends left.
Right.
Heavens, no.
I guess not.
Of course not. That's why you're children. If you don't have children, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, that's really...
You better adopt some or something.
Yeah. Right.
Really? Because, well, of course, I suppose if you never have had children, you fill your life with other things.
But it's interesting that and when you get into an older period, I'm sure that's when, I have no doubt that's when I would feel.
Mine are important to me. I don't know whether everybody's are. That's why I moved out here. Why do you think I came to California?
Right, of course.
I didn't come out here because I think California is a gorgeous place to live. It's all right. But I would have moved to Pudunk if my kids had been there, you know. Wouldn't have made that much difference.
Well, how did they both happen to be out here?
Oh, I don't know. It's sort of, there's something about California that, how do you happen to be out here?
Yes, but I mean, how did they happen both to be out here? Was it connected at all?
Well, Carolyn came first.
Oh, she did?
No. Yes, I think so. She got out of college.
Oh, I think I heard about how, I just wondered if there was a connection between...
I don't think so. I have a feeling they came afterwards.
Uh,
And I don't quite know why they came here.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean,
They
California.
I think they came with some other people that they knew from New York. They were in New York. Maybe they wanted to get out of New York.
How long have you been here?
As old as Hillary.
Ah, so that is 16 years.
I bought the house that year she was born, that fall. She was born in August, and I bought the house before I went. I came out here to be with Carolyn, and I bought this little house, and I didn't move till spring because I bought this house, and then I went back and put my other house on the market. But I bought this house while I was here, and so this house, the woman that sold it to me was a real estate woman from up here at Sue Schaefer's in Larkspur. She was really so nice to me. And she rented this house that winter to a woman with a girl that went to school out here at Marin, the college, I think. And they knew that I was going to want it eventually.
Yeah, of course. You know, you did mention a little bit about your own in-laws, but is there anything interesting about them that you didn't have much connection?
Janet's interesting. My husband's sister is a very interesting woman, I think.
I was sort of thinking, I don't want to get off that, but I was sort of thinking about your
My brother
father and mother-in-law.
Oh, well, they were pretty elderly by
they
the
were.
time I was married. You see, well, it's sort of interesting. John's father was a Virginia politician.
Oh, I see.
Harry Byrd, way back.
Oh.
And a very charming Virginia gentleman who never got his hands dirty. I never saw him without his coat on. He didn't know how to do a damn thing. I bet he couldn't hang a picture. And how my husband ever learned to do things, I don't know, because he certainly didn't get it from him. And he was a very nice man, very polite, you know, beautiful mannered. And John's mother was his second wife because his first wife died when he had two boys, very young. I don't remember when she died. I don't know. So John's mother had been a school teacher in Roanoke, where John was born, and when she married Jim, then she had John and Janet, so that there were two half-brothers too, who lived. They lived like a lot of good Southern families. They all, you know, she raised those boys too, the other boys, the first wife's boys, and her maiden sister lived with them, and his maiden sister lived with them, Miss Mary and my nanny. All lived there. And poor Jenny, John's mother, whose name was Janet too, but everybody called her Jenny. Poor woman, she had a life. With those other old ladies to contend with, you know, and John's father was sort of a ladies' man, I think. I really never saw it particularly, but I have a feeling he probably was. He'd been mayor of Roanoke at one time, and he ended up his days in Richmond in some department of the government, the Virginia government. Sitting down there, probably not doing a damn thing with a bunch of other old retirees, you know. And he lived to be really pretty elderly, in his 80s anyhow, and married a third time after she finally died.
Oh.
Quite a young woman. Sort of stupid. I don't know what she married him for, because he certainly didn't have any money. But she was devoted to him and took good care of him, at least, you know. Everybody should have been grateful for her. And she's still alive, I think. Janet tells me about her every once in a while. She lives at some elegant retiree's home out in the Virginia countryside someplace. I knew her, not well, but there were pictures of their wedding, and she was all dressed up, you know, in elegant clothes. But he was a charming old gentleman. I never knew him well enough to be fond of him one way or the other, and I didn't know Jenny well enough. We didn't, you know, we never lived that close to them.
Yeah.
They came to Pittsburgh for my wedding, and they were very nice, well-bred people, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, were they drinkers?
He wasn't. I don't
wasn't,
know. No, as I say, he had his little toddy, like all.
Yes,
children,
that's right.
But I often wonder if maybe she hadn't had some drinking problems with her troubles. God knows she could have. I mean, I think he led her sort of a merry chase, those things I didn't know, and I don't think John knew them, you know, really.
Mm.
But he went to Richmond, and before she died, and she stayed in Roanoke, and he went to Richmond and went to work, whatever this, I don't know what department was, but anyhow,
Right.
I think he was sort of running around, maybe a little over there, you know. And Sadie Botts, that was Bill, one of the half-brothers. There's some interesting people. Bill was the oldest of these two boys. There was Bill and Jim. And Bill was a devil on two wheels. He was the drinker. Oh, yeah, Bill drank. And he and Mary, the first wife, were divorced. And he had had a couple of kids, the first wife. Well, anyhow, he married this woman by the name of Sadie. What the hell was her name? But anyhow, she'd been married a couple times, too. Anyhow, she was crazy about Bill. And they lived in Silver Springs, Maryland. What did Bill do? I don't know if he worked for the government or what. But Bill and I never got along very well. He was a mean devil. But when my John was in Washington during the Korean War business, that's where he was stationed, they were good to John. And Sadie loved John. She made a big fuss over him, you know. But she always said that she hadn't much use for the old man, the old fellow, Father Jim, we used to call him. And she always insisted that Father Jim probably pushed Jenny under the streetcar when she was knocked out. I don't know. Sadie had no good opinion of
She died by hit by a streetcar?
I don't remember. I think she was hurt. I don't remember. You know, we didn't live near them, and I remember when she died.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember John going down to go to her funeral and so forth and so on. But what she had finally happened, I don't really know. I'd have to ask Janet. Janet's you know, I can find out all these things.
Right.
Janet went to Converse College in South Carolina, girls' college. And she's smart. She's very smart. And she got the award to being the outstanding alumni or some such thing here the last few years. And she lives in Chapel Hill. And she's in terrible condition physically. Mentally, she's great. And so we talk. And I call her because I have more money than she does. So I call her, and we talk about every 2 weeks. And she says, oh, you don't know how I look forward to these telephone calls. You know, we discuss everything under the sun. And she's a great woman. I'm very, very fond of her. She always wants to know all about everybody and what's going on. And she has children, a son who married a German girl, went to Germany during the service and got married in a little German girl, and they were here for a year or two in this country, and they went back to Germany. And I wouldn't be surprised that he's more German than the Germans by this time.
Yeah.
Then she has a daughter that lives near her, and she has a daughter that died.
Oh, no kidding.
And believe it or not, Hillary, Hillary, had a heart condition. And I don't know what caused her heart condition. But she lived long enough to be married, had a big wedding, the whole bit in business, and then she had a horrible heart condition. She just died just like that one day finally, after she'd been married a number of years. I don't know what the man's name she married. I remember the wedding, but I didn't go to the wedding. It must have been while John was sick or something.
Mm-hmm.
But Janet and I are very, you know, good friends and fond of each other. My other daughter, sister-in-law, and I, you know, I don't think we dislike each other. We just are very different kind of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Never had that connection.
No, I don't feel that close to her.
Right, right.
Somehow.
And so you said that was a Maryland family, the
Hillary's
Hillary
were.
family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Botts were from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I think Fredericksburg.
Oh, Fredericksburg.
Yeah. I have some, I guess I've got some Botts family history around. I know one or two. You know, that's a Thomas Hutchinson Botts, the portrait is a Botts.
I didn't know that.
That's a Botts.
Well, see, let me take a shot of that.
Thomas Hutchinson.
I think I can get that from...
That was my husband's. There's a little spotlight there that you can turn on, and I don't know whether you can get it on the picture or not up there.
You tell me about it, and I'll see if I can get the picture to...
let me think. Was my husband's great-grandfather? Great Albert Berry. Great-grandfather. I don't know. I think that was his father was Jim. Then there was Albert, and this man was Thomas Hutchinson. And I think he was my husband's great-great-grandfather.
Ah.
And this portrait was left to my husband. A couple old ladies that were cousins or something had it down in some part of Virginia. When they both died, it was to come to John. And it was created and sent up here. And you can see there's a hole in it. That's supposed to be a sword thrust.
Oh, really?
That's the tale, which is probably not true.
Oh.
But I had my son John cleaned it up for me one year. And he wanted to repair the hole, and I wouldn't let him.
Well, no, if it has that romantic...
Don't you think of doing it. So anyhow, and that's to go to Miss Morgan, my granddaughter, John's oldest daughter, because nobody in my family wanted it.
Is that so?
I offered it to Carolyn, and she said she had no place for it. So it was ordinarily, then I left it to Ed, so Ben could have it. And the more I thought about it, the less I wanted him to have it, because I thought, that doesn't mean a damn thing to that kid, and it never will. And Morgan, John's daughter, is very interested in family and her whole genealogy stuff, and she's the one that is interested in it, and I just decided finally I'd leave it to Morgan. And if Carolyn should change her mind and decide she'd like it, she could probably have it. I could switch it around.
Now, and when roughly do you think that's from? Like the early 1800s?
Oh, easy.
Yeah, maybe older. Oh, so
his brother is buried over in a cemetery in Oakland.
Thomas Hutchinson Botts?
Brother. Not this man. He isn't buried there.
Oh.
But his brother.
His brother.
Who came out here during the gold rush days or something and was an attorney in the city.
Oh.
And he and his wife are buried at, it's a big cemetery. Carol knows the name of it. In fact, she and Hillary went the other day. They were over that way and decided, because Hillary and Morgan and I went one day. I have a genealogy upstairs called the Rhodes Family in America. And some man got all this stuff together. It's a great big fat book. And there's a whole big bunch of Bottses in there because they were, don't ask me, they were all interrelated, you know. And this portrait is mentioned in there and said it's the property of John Botts of Woodville, Ohio. And it also mentioned where this man was buried, in the cemetery out here, and it gave even the plot number or some damn thing.
Oh.
So Morgan and Hillary and I went over there a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, and that's quite a cemetery.
I don't know. Which one is it?
I keep thinking Piedmont. I don't know, is there a Piedmont?
There is a Piedmont. There's a Piedmont. I don't know about the cemetery.
Well, it's over that way someplace. How did Hillary and Carolyn were over that way the other day, and she said, we went to the cemetery. I said, you did?
Huh.
See, Carolyn wasn't with us when we went. And I said, how did you know where it? She said, Hillary remembered where it was. Well, we rode around. There's an office you can go to, and they were amazed that we knew the plot number and everything. And they directed us to it, and we went and finally found it, and he and his wife are buried there. What the dickens is his name? It's Botts, but this is Thomas Hutchinson, and I can't think of the other man, but anyhow. So I do have that genealogy thing, and it's a great big fat book. And it has a lot of this stuff in. It isn't very much up to date, you know.
Right.
But it's sort of interesting. And my mother had genealogy, the Foster genealogy.
That's
her
your
name
mother's
was name. And there was a Foster genealogy, and my brother's got that. He latched onto everything in sight. And so I don't, I know some of her background, you know. But she came to Pittsburgh from Erie, Pennsylvania when her father died, and she and her mother picked up and came to Pittsburgh because she had a brother that was living there, an older brother. And she came to Pittsburgh. And my mother went to Pennsylvania College for Women, which is now Chatham. You ever hear of Chatham?
Sure, of course.
Well, that used to be PCW.
Oh, so your mother was a college graduate.
I guess she graduated. I'm sure she must have. But it was right up there on, you know where it is?
Yes, I do. Off Fifth
Beautiful,
Avenue.
on Woodland Road.
Yes.
It's lovely up there.
Yes. It's just up the hill from Fifth Avenue. Yes,
It's really
area.
pretty up in there.
See, I went to high school just at Central Catholic, so really only, whatever that is, 8, 10 blocks farther along Fifth Avenue. But
Central Catholic is down Fifth Avenue, almost on a par where Ellis would be over on Ellsworth. I think.
That's what I thought.
Just that, that distance, a couple of blocks down there.
Right.
There's a curve in Ellsworth where it comes up to Fifth Avenue. And if I remember where that Central Catholic is, I think I remember. It's a fairly newish high school, more or less.
From your point of view, maybe, but it's because it's a brick building, sort of like a castle, built. I don't know when it was built, but on the cover of the Annie Dillard book,
the Childhood, American Childhood.
Yeah, American Childhood. There's a painting, which looks as if from Carnegie Mellon across the.
I've got that book, but I don't remember seeing it.
If you look closely, you can see the top of Central Catholic High School.
Oh.
So it's in that painting.
Yeah, well, that general area.
Right.
Down. I can sort of remember, but I have a vague recollection.
Well, actually, it used to be across the street was Winchester Thurston.
Yeah.
Right, the girl.
That one time. That was just Winchester.
Yeah.
Thurston was out on Shady Avenue.
Oh. I think that's not there anymore.
No.
But it was there when I was in high school.
Yeah, that's right.
And because when you were a freshman, you could be, you were on the 4th floor, so you could look down into the recreation area that the girls had, and you could see them sunning themselves, and they'd pull up their skirts. And it was pretty exciting for a freshman.
I went to dancing school at that place. They had a woman had a dancing class.
Oh, really?
In the old Winchester School building. When I was just a little girl, we went to dancing school.
Oh, so you've always been a dancer.
Well, the dancing school stuff was ridiculous. I don't remember what we learned, except they'd make the little boys bow and come and ask you to dance and that kind of stuff.
Right.
We were just little kids,
Let me see if I have anything other that I was going to...
That's what I want to be in my next life, is a dancer and a good sleeper. Which I'm not anymore.
You're not a good sleeper?
Lousy.
When did that start to happen?
I don't think I've ever been the best sleeper in the world, and I think over the years, with all my problems, they kept me awake at night. When you're listening for children, for one thing. I never had bad babies like Carol did. She had the 2 worst babies in the world. They were bellowers. They were awful, both of them. Why, I don't know, because I don't ever remember my kids keeping me up like hers did. Hers were awful.
When you're speaking of Ben and Hillary.
Yes, terrible, both of them. And, anyhow, what were we talking about? I sort of go on, and I forget.
Well, you were talking about dancing, and that you wanted.
Oh, yeah, but we went to that little dancing class, and I said, as a sleeper, I don't. I go in fits and starts. I sleep pretty well sometimes, but now, not very many older people sleep real well.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
You go to sleep, and then you wake up, and then you toss and turn. You can't go back to sleep. And it's just, it's too bad all of us can't get together and play a little something in a little gin rummy or something, at night, because half the people say, oh, I had a terrible night,
Well, was there ever a time when you wanted to work other than being a homemaker?
Not until after my husband died.
And then you did want to work?
I did work.
Oh, what did you do?
I was the village librarian.
Ah.
That was pure luck. It was one of the best. That's another good thing that happened to me in my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just loved it. And after John died, here I was, and Carolyn was still in high school, and I knew that there was no sense in me moving away and upsetting her life. The boys were gone, and Woodville, pretty bad. There you were. And I happened to know the woman who was the head of the county library. And she was a very elegant soul, sort of. Hallie Grimes had been there for years. Everybody knew her. So I wrote Hallie a note and said, you know, I would just love to do something. And I'm no librarian. I don't have any library degree, but I love books. I'm like, if you can think of anything I can do, let me know. Well, I didn't hear from her and didn't hear from her. And finally I got a letter from her. Or she called me, I don't remember. So I went over and talked to her, and the Woodville Library was being run by an old lady that had lived in Woodville all her life. She cleaned the library too, believe it or not. And that's about what Dorothy was. She was a character. There ever was one, and she knew about as much about books as some 2-year-old, you know. But she was faithful. She took care of things, and the library circulation was minuscule. People in that part of the country, they don't read. They don't have time. They're too busy cleaning corners, you know. But anyhow, Hallie would have loved to have gotten rid of Dorothy, this old lady, because she just drove Hallie nearly crazy. But she was wished on her, and it was hard to get rid of her. But anyhow, she said, you know, Mary Louise, you'll have to have some little training, so you can come over here a couple of days a week and, you know, and train you a little bit. So I did. And I worked the desk, and, you know, and I got so finally that people come to the Woodville Library wanting things, you know, and I'd go back and forth and bring things back. And this went on for, I don't remember how long. And finally, I went to work when they were still in this small building, and then they moved into another building next door, which the bank had vacated, and made it into the library. And it was really quite nice, big and roomy and lots of room, and they renovated the whole thing. It was quite lovely, very nice. So Dorothy was still there, but I guess she finally decided she was going to retire. Whether she got pushed into retiring, I don't even remember. But anyhow, when she retired, I had worked long enough and gradually got more and more responsibility. So I just stepped into the library job. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I really enjoyed it thoroughly. I worked there until just before I moved out here.
Oh.
I could have been probably working to this day. They never push you out, you know. And I came out here when Hillary was born. And I had 2 other women working with me that so we all worked by the hour. We liked it because we could work like we wanted, and if we took off, we didn't feel bad, you know. So I never made a lot of money, but that wasn't really very important. It was something to do, and I loved it, except for the fact that people just don't read. They're awful. Well, you know, the libraries here are jam-packed. You can hardly get into them. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, I worked there for almost 15, from the time John died. I think I went to work, John died in March, and I think I started the library in that next fall, and gradually, so I worked till 19, Hillary was born in 76. I was there about 15 years. And I didn't resign till I decided I was going to move out here. And I went back and said, I'm ready to retire now. Somebody else can take it on. And that's what happened. And I'll tell you, I'm really proud of that. Because I get a little pension, tain't much, but it's fine. And I earned it myself. It's my money. And it's my spending money. I go cash that check and just sort of spend it like I want to. And I don't know, it was just something that, and I always loved books. I like working around books. It's nice. And I worked at Larkspur after I got here.
Oh, you did?
For a little while.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Kilburn wanted me to work on Saturdays and fill in up there. And I did for about 3 months till I couldn't take it. Oh, those libraries are awful to work in.
Are they?
Oh, they're exhausting.
Because they're so crowded?
They're so busy. And Larkspur is really run like a small town library in lots of ways, you know. It's not like a county library at all. See, it's a village library. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Kilburn was sort of a strange one, like a lot of librarians. And he thought I was just fine, you know, and I filled in on Saturday. But I was the only one there, except for a page shelving books. And they're only open from 10 to 3. But you're so busy sometimes that you don't even have time to leave the desk to go to the bathroom. It's awful.
Oh.
And you're exhausted by the time you get home.
Right.
You're just busy, busy, busy. And then when you close the doors, you have all the desks to straighten up and everything. And I stood it for about 3 months, and I thought, I can't do this any longer. I'm too old.
No, it's no fun.
But I loved it. But you didn't get a chance to see the books. All you did was to give people books, and, you know, it was a mess.
So you had always been a reader?
Yeah. And my father was a reader. Mother read too. But I remember Dad and we used to walk to East Liberty. Way back in the days when East Liberty was really, it was halfway decent. I don't know what it's like now. It must be terrible.
Rough.
But Hayes had a store out there, sort of a not bookstore, almost like business supplies and stuff, but all kinds of things like that. A really nice store. And they had a lending library. Remember? Oh. There's such thing as lending libraries. I guess you paid so much a day for them.
Oh, I see.
And we used to walk out to East Liberty lots of times, and we'd go to the library and get this little lending library at Hayes and get books. And then I went to Old Carnegie Library down at the big library. I remember the Carnegie Library down there. I used to go down there and get books. And I read a lot as a kid growing up, too. All kinds of things, you know.
And you walked a lot, it sounds like. I mean, you really got around.
I suppose I walked. I don't know. I didn't drive until you were old enough to drive, you know.
Right.
And I walked to school lots. I didn't walk to school, but I'd walk home.
Oh.
Dad would usually drop me off on his way downtown or something.
Where were his offices?
The Frick Building.
Oh, the Frick Building. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Which was right next to the Carnegie Building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember those elevators. They sort of bounced. They with a lot of brass and quite elegant. And they sort of bounced. And I always remember the smell of law offices. They have a certain, you smell the books. Yeah, I remember them very well. And I worked once.
Oh.
After I got out of Miss Conley's business school. I don't remember how that happened. I was going to be married in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm sure I was going to be married in the fall. But I worked, there was a woman, Sarah Weir, who had been Andrew Carnegie's secretary. And she had an office in the Frick Building called the Treasurer's Office of Carnegie Institute. And she was a big, ponderous sort of woman, and she sat at her desk like queen, you know, and she wouldn't have a man in her office, nothing but women. And she ordered a bunch of, you know, they waited on her hand and fist. And somehow my father knew Sarah Weir. He had stopped in there for something, and she thought he was great. So he must have told her his daughter was looking for a job, and she gave me a job sight unseen. So I went in and worked for Sarah Weir. And I was the youngest girl in the office. And I remember she'd send us down to the market for sweet rolls and stuff for her breakfast. And have people make her coffee, you know, and stuff. And she was an old tyrant. Oh, she was awful. And I remember keeping books or something, which I had never done before, and I hated it. But she called me in one day and she said, Miss Schreiner, will you please write me out the counties in Pennsylvania with their county seats? And I said, certainly, as soon as I can look them up. She said, you don't know them? And I still can remember that. I had to go home that night and memorize the whole damn bunch so I could go remember her. She was just ridiculous. And we had a real spat about something. I can't remember what it was, but she was awful. She was just so bossy. And we had a real argument about something. And one of the other women that worked there, who was really very nice, she said, you know, Miss Schreiner, she's going to fire you. And she said, you know what I'd do if I were you? I know you don't care whether you work or not anyhow. I would just tell her you're quitting. So I did. And I went down to my father's office and cried. I was so angry. I sat there and cried and cried and cried. Oh, dear. Such an old so-and-so as she was. She was just an old pensioner is what she was, sitting up there signing checks. You don't have any idea how much money those people pay out the treasurer's office of a big thing like that. Well, they've got that, umpteen money to pay out for all kinds of things.
Wow. Yes.
And it all went through that office. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that was one of my experiences of really working till I worked at the library.
Well, what did your father say when he heard you quit the job?
Oh, I think he didn't give a damn. He probably laughed at me. I don't remember now, but it didn't make any difference to him. Because I'm sure, I'm almost positive I was going to be married that fall or something. I don't remember.
So you got something out of Mrs. Conley's business school.
Oh, yeah, I sure did,
Oh, that's interesting. Well, are there any kind of secret things that you've never really spoken about that you think it might be interesting to talk about?
Well, I say my alcoholic husband is probably a secret as far as I'm concerned. I don't talk. You're about the only person beside my children I've ever talked to about it.
Oh, I see.
Certainly nobody out here. I don't know anybody I ever talked to it about. And it's not, as I say, it's just something that is rather a painful subject, and you sort of manage to just not forget it, but you just don't discuss it. And there's no sense dwelling on the bad things that happened to you in your life. You could be resentful about things for the rest of your life. I think my mother was very resentful about lots of things. And I don't know, I just think she held things against people. And I just always decided that wasn't a very good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess, what's the use? You just have to manage to take it day by day.
Right.
That's the way it goes. And I can't think of anything else. I'm trying to think of any secret things I had. Goodness, Gene. I don't know. I never really committed any crimes that I can think of. I didn't tell anybody,
Today there seems to be very much the feeling that in a marriage, say, of a partnership, of like, as you were saying about Ray taking on fatherhood, and that there seems to be a lot of shared expectations, at least. And it seems like maybe that was not the case, and as in most of your life, that you didn't have.
No, it wasn't. And I tell you another thing, that people nowadays have learned to live their own lives to a certain extent, even in a marriage, which is, we did things together.
Right.
I didn't go out with women friends in the evening and do things, ever. And look at Carolyn. She's always zooming here, zooming there. And Ray goes and plays. He has his things and she has hers. And we never did that. Sure, I played bridge in the daytime. And I think one time we had a group that played at night. And I didn't really like it particularly. When I played bridge at night, my husband and I played bridge together. It was a social thing. Somebody would come in for an evening, you'd sit down and play a rubber sole bridge for just to pass the evening. It wasn't, and I don't, but I'm amazed sometimes, Carol will be off, she goes and has dinner here, and she and her meditation group, which I used to make fun of her, I said, well, have you levitated yet, and so forth. But, I begin to realize how important it is to her, and that it really is. I wish I knew more about it, to be honest with you. I think probably that Bill Moyer's program was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Very amazing.
And he's rather an amazing man when you think about it. Just the fact that he came, his father was a Baptist minister, for heaven's sake.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I was thinking of the program when you mentioned about holding the children. Did you see the one? They did a segment in a pediatric intensive care unit. And
Did they?
Well, you might not have seen that one yet. Oh, you will be very interested in that one, just based on your interest with babies. Because, they did a beautiful segment in there. A hospital in Texas, maybe it was. I can't.
If I saw it, I certainly.
No, you didn't, because you'd know it if you had seen it.
I don't think I remember it.
Because they interviewed the nurses that ran the unit, and some parents, and these babies that are like the size of my hand.
No.
Oh no, I think Carolyn has that stuff on tape.
She was going to, because she's Thursday night. whatever night she misses a lot of them, you know, because
Yeah.
she's not there and she's running around here, there, or yon.
Right.
And,
But no, check in. If they don't, we'll find it, because you would be very interested in that.
You know, the kids gave me a VCR thing here.
I saw the box.
I never use it, not very often. I don't like to rent a film and sit there and watch it by myself. There's something about it that it just doesn't, I don't know. I don't like putting on a movie, and there I am, and I don't like starting and stopping it. I want to, you know, and I don't like to be stuck out there watching it. If you have got a television program on, you can get up and move around and do what you want. I've just never gotten myself to the point where and yet I know a lot of people that have them, that enjoy them and rent movies all the time.
Yeah. Well, are there other things that, I mean, there's so many things that are different from how you were when you were young.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's not...
God, we didn't even have television, you know. Just think of that. And Amos and Andy on the radio, for heaven's sakes. I remember that as a child when we first heard those things.
Well, even radio was just coming in when you were a child.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, commercial radio.
Yeah, and then, you know, we used to listen to the radio a lot, even when I was first married.
Well, the first radio station in the country, commercial, was in Pittsburgh.
KDKA.
Right.
Oh, sure, I remember that.
So we always had radio in Pittsburgh, but...
Yeah, but, you know, as I say, but I went up here last week. You know, I've got a video store right up at the corner.
Yes.
And after seeing, what's her name, in Indochine, Catherine Deneuve.
Right.
I just went nuts about Catherine Deneuve, and I thought, oh, there was a wonderful article about her in Lear. Have you ever seen Lear?
Only on the cover. I have never read the magazine.
Well, I saw her picture on the cover up at the Larkspur Library one day, so I brought it home because her picture was on. It was a great article about her, and there were 2 or 3 other articles in that magazine that were very interesting. It's quite an interesting magazine.
Oh.
So I went up here, decided I'd get myself a Catherine Deneuve film, because after seeing Indochine, you know, and so the girl up here is really nice. And she said, I don't have some of those here at all, but I can get them for you, but I think I've got one over here. And she went over and found one, and you know, right now, it wasn't in the list that I had made from the article. I can't remember the title of the damn thing. But I brought it home, and I did watch it. But you know, some of those foreign-made films are not the best prints.
Yeah.
And the captions are in a bad spot that you can't always read them. They come very quickly, and they're against the background. They don't show up too clearly.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting movie. Sort of a French marriage problem, you know, thing. And she's lovely.
Yeah.
But that'll probably be the last one I rent for a long time.
Well, are there other things that are modern things that you really like, or that you feel, or are there some that you feel uncomfortable with?
What, the movies or films?
No, modern kinds of inventions and conveniences.
Well, I don't know a thing about all this new. I don't have any idea what they're even doing with all these things. I've never learned to run any of them, and I don't think I ever will. And what's more, I don't care. They're not part of my life.
Yeah.
I look at these children growing up, and you know, with Ben, you know, he's been playing games on all that stuff ever since he was big as a minute. And you know, Carolyn has to practically yank him away.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I thought of that too, because when you were talking about your father's law office, and law office, the smell of books, and of course Ray's work is law, but it's all in computers. Yeah. No books. It replaces all the books.
Well, you know, and Ray, you know, it's hard for me to think that it is, because he's never practiced law as such, although he did, I guess, for a little while after he got out of college. He was in the law office in Chicago and just hated the courts and so forth and so on.
I didn't know.
He couldn't stand it. He was most unhappy. And I think that's when they came to California.
But
he just completely rebelled against the whole system. It just was not his cup of tea at all.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, but it's all, so in all his work, all that tax law and stuff, no books. There are no books.
Well, you know, he likes what he does.
Oh, yeah.
And that's great, you know. He's a nice man. I like Ray. When I first met him, I thought, good grief almighty, where did, you know, this man is nothing that I would have ever thought Carolyn would have been interested in. He was just completely different than anything I'd ever known. And John said to me, what the hell did she want to marry that man for? And I said, probably because he's so different from anything she ever knew. And but I've learned to appreciate Ray. I'm very fond of him, and he's a wonderful father, and he's a very, he's just a fine man. And he's devoted to his wife and family, and I'm very fond of him. I don't think I said, Carolyn, you really lucked out. And she said, I didn't luck out. She said, he was in terrible shape when I first married him. She said, there he was, a divorced man with a bratty little kid, living on peanut butter sandwiches, and, oh, she said, you know. And he has changed to a certain extent over the years. I don't think she so much has changed him. It's just that he has accepted the responsibilities, you know. And he loves his home and his life like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why he zooms back and forth in Chicago instead of moving to Chicago.
Right, right.
Anything rather than that. He wouldn't live in Chicago on a bet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you know, I remember hearing a story from Carolyn and Ray that there was a time when they were living together and he wrote to you or something.
He
like
did.
What was this? What's the story on that?
Well, when they, you know, Carolyn never made any real secret about it. You know, they were going to move out here, and that she'd met this man, you know, and they were moving out here, and they were going to live together. And she wasn't married, and so you know, I was coming out to California. I had been out here after she moved here first, when she was still living in the city, and so then she didn't know Ray at that time. She was going with what's his name, Chris Martin. He's a real sweet guy, but like a big brother, I guess. Anyhow, then I came back when Ray and Carolyn were out here in Larkspur, and my sister-in-law said to me, you mean to tell me, Louise, that you go stay there when they aren't married? And I said, oh, Jean, come on, what do you want me to do, for heaven's sake? So anyhow, you know, and I liked Ray, and Ray had written me a letter just saying, you know, this is probably very strange for you, you know, and just sort of kind of trying to explain their relationship, and that he felt that it probably had upset me some, you know, and so forth. And it was a very sweet, nice, thoughtful letter. I'd almost forgotten about that, but he did. And I like Ray. Ray and I get along real well. Sometimes I feel Ray and I understand each other more than some of the, we're more of an age pattern. Some of the things that astound both of us don't astound the rest of them, you know. Disneyland, for one thing. Both of us just sat there and looked at Disneyland. I thought, Disneyland, good grief almighty. We all went down one time. Oh, I couldn't go back. I wouldn't go back if you pulled me. It just drive me crazy. Bunch of kids running around, and never saw so many fat women in my life. Full of fat old ladies from the country, you know, or someplace.
That sounds like the East. That's what I'm used to seeing in Pennsylvania or Ohio.
Oh, you should see some of those small Ohio towns. Oh, they're awful. You should see Gibsonburg, where my ex-daughter-in-law came from. It's worse than Woodville. Because Woodville, at least, is on a main drag. It's on Route 20. And it finally, now, and even back when we had it's gotten to be almost suburban in lots of ways. So the people, the old natives, were still there. But Gibsonburg was off the main drag. And I helped out over there in their little library one time, once or twice, when something happened. I went over there. And I used to be astounded at the funny old-looking old ladies that would walk along the streets in that little town. They're really strange, those towns. They're 20 years behind the times. They really are.
Yeah, yeah.
This is true.
I'm going to pause for 1 second. You can get something to drink. I'm just going to...
Little devil, that I guess that's what the contrast, you know. Ed was always just so much easier. Oh, there was no comparison.
Is that right?
Yeah. And John was a terrible student through elementary and high school. He only did what he wanted to do, you know. He was looking out the window half the time, or drawing airplanes in the back of his book or some damn thing. Oh.
But Ed was easy?
Well, Ed was always a pretty good student, and he worked hard, you know, and I don't know, he was just a very quiet, gentle child, easy to get along with. I said, the University of Michigan ruined him.
How so?
Well, I was laughing. It was sort of like Berkeley, you know, very rebellious kind of place back even when he went there. I think it sort of changed a lot. It made him much more nonconformist than he was. I don't know.
When you look back on your life, what would you say? What would you say you've learned?
Well, you learn just have to take things as they come and to learn to cope with life. It's not very pleasant lots of times, and everybody has their problems, and you just have to be strong enough to take them. And, you know, you're just lucky if you're able to sort of keep going. And, you know, it's pretty important if you get older to be able to have enough money to live on. Now, believe it or not, that is very important. What if my kids had had to take care of me? Wouldn't that have been a pain in the neck? They might not think so at this point, but wouldn't it? Oh, I think of it now, it sounds terrible. And I certainly don't want to ever live with one of my children. I had John here for about 2 years one time, you know. Oh, brother. He had, you know, this girl that he's living with now. They've known each other for a long time. And I'm very fond of Shauna. She's a nice woman. And they had a real falling out, and she turned around and married some guy, I think. And it really shook John up, I think, and he just pulled out, and up here he came, landed on Mama's doorstep, you know. And he stayed here. Didn't have a job, you know, nothing. And he lived in that little back room back there, which was fine. But, you know, I had to feed him and so forth and so on. And it was, John and I get along fine for a while. And he's much better now, anyhow, than he used to be. But he has a lot of ups and downs, you know. He's very temperate. Can be, and boy, I'll tell you, he's pretty grumpy at times, too. And he ain't easy. And having him under my feet without anything really to do, and he was not happy himself, so consequently, you know, I was really glad when, I can't remember how he finally, what happened, how he finally got back together with Shauna. Oh, the marriage that she married, this guy that she married had a child. And I think he was hoping he found somebody to help take care of this kid, and this didn't suit Shauna at all. And I never have asked her about it. I don't know. But I think John and Shauna seem to races. He finally decided Shauna's the woman in his life, you know.